It's hard enough to find a school these days if you only search in a local public school system, but many parents are looking at multiple sets of options. In Boston, these also include independent charter schools and Catholic schools. Starting this year, covering these bases will be more easy thanks to an online tool known as bostonschoolshub.org. The website was developed by the different groups of schools collaborating through the Boston Compact. To tell us how it works is our guest, the Chief Operating Officer for Uncommon Schools Boston, Will Austin. Thank you very much for being with us, Will.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I know this is just another way for making things user-friendly. This is why we have all these apps. But talk about the Compact and how this approach really serves an important purpose.
Sure. The Boston Compact is now entering almost its second year. It was initiated by the mayor of Boston, and also the Gates Foundation. And the principle is pretty simple. It's that families don't care what you call a school. They care that it's great. So in Boston, our compact consists of Boston Public Schools, charter schools, and also the Archdiocese of Boston, serving about 90% of the kids who go to school in Boston. And the idea is to promote two things: access and equity. Let's ensure that families and educators have access to all types of schools. And secondly, let's make sure that those schools are equitable in the sense that they provide a high-quality education for children.
I know this comes into the context of trying to reduce the reliance on busing for the district public schools, but I guess at the same time people might be saying, well, why get on a bus to a charter school if you can find another one that's just as good closer?
So Boston Public Schools this year will spend $1/10 of $1 billion on school buses. And as not just a Boston charter leader, but also as a resident of Boston, we know those dollars can be spent differently. So for charter schools, it's within their interest also to have kids closer to their schools as well, because that's shorter commute for kids. That means that they're more likely to tell their friends and siblings about the schools themselves. So the neighborhood effect, as you would call it, is not just better for district schools, it's also better for charter schools and Catholic schools.
And I guess one of the reasons people might have been investigating charter schools and applying in recent years is that they just happen to see it because they live near it too.
Yeah, and I think as we've seen now, although there's still a lot more work to be done around what's called the digital divide between high-income and low-income families around access to technology, you don't have to go that far to see that everyone has a smartphone now. So the ability for any family, whether they're high-income or low-income, to go to a website like Boston Schools Hub, put in the neighborhood, and get back a set of schools of every type is a tool that's frankly so simple, it's kind of a shame we haven't had it already.
Well, put it in context, because if you say, I'm in this zip code, and you get, let's say, 2 or 3 schools for the grade level you're interested in, you do have to do some exploring beyond that. And some of the exploring, I guess, would even be on the web still.
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of schools we're describing have either online applications or information about their schools available on websites, as well as information around showcases. But you're right, there are still 2 stops. You have to go to a website like Boston Schools Hub, and then you have to take the additional step to do your application, whether through Boston Public Schools, a charter school, or a Catholic school. We're not yet at the point where, like many cities in the country, where we have kind of a universal application enrollment system. There are some cities that have done that. Boston has not done that yet.
Yeah. I guess the other thing too is that I know that, for instance, with Catholic schools, there is a tuition. Maybe there's some staggering of the fees for some families, but I guess when you put these all together, it almost seems to say to the parent, this is in the ballpark. This might work, maybe not, but maybe you should take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that all means all. And for Catholic schools, charter schools, and Boston Public Schools, we're looking for families who have a match. And what I mean is there are families that want their child to go to a local Boston public school because maybe they want a 2-way bilingual program. Maybe they want to send their kids to a nearby charter school because they want the extended day. And maybe they have a religious affinity and they want that for their children. So it's not about necessarily ensuring that that every kid goes to every school. It's about finding the appropriate matches, knowing that every family is different, every child's different.
I imagine, aside from technological advances, there might have been some barriers to a website like this in the past, maybe attitudinal barriers, that the idea of competition might have been something that people didn't feel comfortable with. I mean, this does put things on the spot.
It does, and in some ways you can't hold back technology. You know, the world is becoming more transparent, information is more available, and if we assume that families are going to go out and find the best things for their kids like they always have, they're going to find their way to the information. So it's on all of us to make sure that information is available, but then also our schools are of high quality. And you're absolutely right, it is relational. Many years ago, when charter schools were newer, And when Catholic schools were declining in their enrollment, there was a lot of distrust amongst the sectors about who was doing what. And the last couple of years working with the Boston Compact and through the leadership of Mayor Menino and hopefully now Mayor Walsh, we can say that all the children of Boston go to all of Boston's schools, and it requires for the adults to get along so the kids do better.
Now, there's still other ways in which wires can be crossed. For example, let's say a parent goes shopping, they find one district public school they really like, and they find a charter school they really like, and they hit the jackpot. Their kid gets accepted into both schools. Now, I guess the timetables, how does it go? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's still more work to do here. So the bostonschoolshubs.org is definitely a first step. There are still many mismatches now in how offers are timed between different systems, the timeline of those applications, what types of things are required for those applications. And there's a lot more work we can do to make sure these are more streamlined for families. But we hope that just by taking this first step, we're changing people's attitudes as they relate to schooling and thinking, you know, no family, Chris, says, I want to send my kid to a great Boston public school or a great charter school or a great Catholic school. They say, I want to send my kid to a great school. And as much as we're giving folks resources to achieve that goal as opposed to a bureaucratic silo, the better for families.
By the way, do you see schools, I know you've been more familiar with the charter schools, but do you see them maybe adapting to this in some way and saying, you know, it seems because of maybe where we're located that maybe we want to do something a little different?
So ultimately, what you see charter schools in their initial existence, and also in Catholic schools in their original existence, is that they had to recruit and retain their own students to stay open. And what you see now with Boston Public Schools is they've moved to this more home-based approach of school assignment, and also this idea that some schools may be higher or lower enrolled. We understand that, you know, for lack of a better term, the market's going to demand who stays open and who thrives and which schools are high performing. So ultimately, it's like any other industry now, you have to adapt. And schools have to adapt.
Adapt, or maybe you have some connection with a community-based organization, do some programming.
Sure, absolutely.
So finally, if parents want to check this out, we'll remind them one more time.
I've said it like 5 times, but say it one more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't say it too much.
It's bostonschoolshubs.org. It's part of the Boston Compact.
All right. Thank you very much for being with us. Will Austin.
Thanks, Chris.